Eric Young and Rich Swann. That looks to be a feud set for the future in Impact Wrestling going forward. Eric Young made his return to Impact Wrestling at Slammiversary this past weekend, or a couple of weekends ago. Now, gosh, doesn't time move so quickly when you're enjoying pro wrestling, right? That's the thing with pro wrestling. So Eric Young was one of the surprise entrants in the main event for the vacant Impact Wrestling World Championship. Although he wasn't the only surprise entrant. Of course, going into it, we assumed it was going to be a fatal four-way match for the Impact World Championship with a mystery to be announced final competitor in that match. Now, earlier on in the show, we had seen Rich Swann. He was outside, or what was in what was believed to be the Good Brothers dressing room. He was on his crutches. Of course, Rich Swann had been out for the longest period of time. He was hurt at the Bash at the Brewery 2 event in January for Impact Wrestling and had been out of action ever since. The return came almost an hour after he used the crutches to give the effect that he wasn't going to return that later that night at Slammiversary. And he did know, actually, in the promo backstage when he was coming out of the Good Brothers dressing room that he was going to keep his eyes on the match, and we now know why, because he was, of course, a member of the match itself. So he had been out for about like 6-7 months. He had 2 surgeries on his ankle, his leg. He'd had plates, he'd had nails, the kitchen sink, my leg, whatever, put in there to help repair him. It was a real bad injury, and for a period of time, it was questioning, it was touch and go whether he was going to come back or not. I mean, I know people will say, well, they always say that, but I think legitimately, it was a rough injury for Rich Swann, and credit for him for coming back so quickly from a real bad injury. So he was the surprise entrant. He was the mystery entrant in the Fatal 4-Way match at Slammiversary for the vacant Impact World Championship. And I would be remiss, and I would probably be lying if I said, I mean, the reaction is there on the watch-along on the channel here. When he was announced as the mystery person, it was a bit underwhelming because everyone was assuming that it was going to be a former Impact wrestler making their return to the company, or was going to be a former Impact World Champion, or something along those lines. A lot of people thought it was going to be EC3, myself included. I thought it was going to be EC3, but it was not. It was Rich Swann, so people were like, oh, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, I suppose. But we did get a return from a former Impact Wrestling superstar, a former Impact World Champion, a former TNA World Tag Team Champion, a former TNA X Division Champion, a former TNA King of the Mountain Television Champion, whatever that bout was called. Eric Young. Eric Young is a Triple Crown winner, a Grand Slam winner. He has done it all in Impact Wrestling. He is Mr. Impact Wrestling. He's up there with the likes of Abyss and others that just, you cut them open, they bleed Impact Wrestling. That is Eric Young. He made his return to the company after being released by WWE back in April and serving out his 90-day non-compete clause. He returned to Impact Wrestling, and he was the 5th competitor in the match, and announced that not only was he going to be in the match, but it was now a fatal 5-way elimination match as opposed to a fatal 4-way elimination match. So during the match, Eric Young is shockingly eliminated by Rich Swann, and a lot of people were surprised at that, myself included. I was like, whoa. And so was Eric Young, and he was not happy. Now, Eric Young had also been busted open during the match. He had a face with blood all over it, which just took what happened next, for me, up to the next level. It was awesome. An infuriated Eric Young goes to attack Rich Swann's surgically repaired leg. He just does the whole chop block, and then he stamps on his leg, and then he uses the steel chair on his leg, and then he puts Rich Swann's leg through the chair, jumps on the chair, Pillmanizes it, then puts Rich Swann's leg against the steel ring post, uses the steel chair to smash smashes his leg with the steel chair and against the ring post. A bit of a Rich Swann leg sandwich there. It's sort of like a concerto, but with the steel ring step. I was trying to think of something humorous there, but the brain's not working today for that kind of humor. So he attacks Rich Swann's leg. Rich Swann can barely walk. Eric Young, during this period of time, is just selling this like an absolute madman. Eric Young his eyes are wider than his head. They look like they're going to pop out of his head. Rich Swann is just writhing around in pain. He's doing a fantastic job selling the injury, selling the pain that he's in. You've got Don Callis on commentary doing just a phenomenal job as well, saying about how Rich Swann's had to work to get back from this injury. It was potentially a career-threatening injury. He had nails, he had plates, he had screws, all of that sort of stuff put into his ankle to return to the ring. He returns to the ring at the biggest event of the year, Slammiversary, on the biggest stage, for the biggest prize in Impact Wrestling, the Impact Wrestling World Championship. And then Eric Young, just because Eric Young was defeated by Rich Swann, decides to end Rich Swann's dream and attack his legs. And how dare Eric Young, and what a dastardly, cowardly act and crazed man Eric Young really is. It was just great. It was just absolutely great. And, of course, Rich Swann wouldn't last much longer. He would be eliminated by Ace Austin pretty much moments after Eric Young had made the attack. Also, actually, and I kind of haven't mentioned this previously on the channel, but what was also great about that, of course, wasn't just the attack, wasn't just the sow job from Rich Swann, wasn't just Eric Young's selling of being insane, and Don Callis also on commentary. What was great is that they gave Rich Swann maybe like 10 or maybe longer than that, 30 seconds to try and get back to his feet. So not only do you have Rich Swann just being absolutely massacred by Eric Young and his leg that was surgically repaired just be completely destroyed by this madman because he was eliminated by Rich Swann, but you kind of show then the guts, the moxie, the fight, the character that Rich Swann has, because they allowed Rich Swann to get back to his feet, say, you know what, no, I don't want to give this opportunity up. And then he gets eliminated by Ace Austin anyway. But the point being that the story that they were telling there, of course, was Eric Young being crazed and attacking Rich Swann, but they also added a layer to Rich Swann's character in that even after all of that, after everything he had been through, he didn't want to give up his dream yet, and he was still willing to fight for his dream, but it just was taken away by him by Eric Young. I thought that was great storytelling. Just that whole angle was just great. It was so well done. As I mentioned, I wasn't invested when I saw Rich Swann came out. It was a letdown for me. When Eric Young came out, I was happy. I was happy to see Eric Young, and to be honest, everyone knew that Eric Young was coming back to Impact Wrestling, but it was a little bit like, I wanted it to be EC3, and I think a lot of people wanted it to be EC3, and it frustrated some people, but then as soon as that angle happened, I was all in. I was totally emotionally invested. I was totally riveted to my screen that I was watching it on, and I just thought, this is just a great angle. This is a great angle, and it's well executed and just really well done. And now, this is the reason I'm making this video now, because I'm interested in what they're going to do going forward. I'm fascinated to see what they do with the Eric Young character going forward in Impact Wrestling. I'm fascinated to see what happens to Rich Swann when he returns to Impact Wrestling, because he will return. But I'm interested to see that Rich Swann versus Eric Young feud and how they pay that off. Can you imagine 3 months ago going, I'll tell you what I really want to see. I really want to see an Eric Young versus Rich Swann feud. People laugh at you. People go, get up, you've had too much, go to bed, take a lay down, because you've obviously, I don't know what you've been drinking or whatever, you need to lay down and have a very long nap. If that's your cup of tea of, I want to see an Eric Young versus Rich Swann match, you'd be, are you crazy? You out of your mind? But now, after that angle, hook it up to my veins. It was awesome. It was great. So that just is a credit to not only Eric Young and Rich Swann, but Impact Wrestling in general, of the angle that they put together, and getting, maybe just me, but emotionally invested in this storyline and in this feud. I'm really interested in it. Now, we had this past week on Impact Wrestling on Access Television, we had the new Impact World Champion Eddie Edwards. Of course, Eddie Edwards did win the match at Slammiversary to crown the new Impact World Champion after the championship was vacated. So we had Eddie Edwards out there. He's talking about being a fighting champion, talking about facing all comers and defending the championship every week on Impact Wrestling, and provided opportunity to everyone on the Impact Wrestling roster and beyond. How is he going to do that? He's going to do it by an open challenge. Yes, we're going to have another open challenge in professional wrestling. At the same time in which we have Cody's TNT Championship Open Challenge on Dynamite, we will also have an Impact World Championship Open Challenge every week on Impact Wrestling on Access Television. Now, I've made my feelings clear about this. I did a video about the whole Open Challenge concept when it comes to Eddie Edwards. I must preface this by saying I love open challenges. I think they're really fun. I think it's a great way to drive up people's interest in the show and get people to watch and bring in viewers for ratings, because you don't know who's going to compete in the match. You don't know a lot of the time who the opponent is going to be, of course, unless they announce it ahead of time, which like AEW have done quite a few times. But the times in which You don't know who's going to be facing or answering the open challenge. It's great. That anticipation, moments before the opponent comes out, is awesome. It's awesome. John Cena did it with the United States Championship Open Challenge. That thing was great. You didn't know who was going to face every week, and you had moments because of it. Kevin Owens making his debut on Monday Night Raw. Sami Zayn making his debut on Monday Night Raw. And it doesn't just have to be debuts. Cesaro had some amazing matches with John Cena in that United States Championship Open Challenge. It was great. I think even Stardust, Cody Rhodes then, who was now doing an Open Challenge of his own, answered the Open Challenge one week, and that was great because it was people getting an opportunity to work with a big star that wouldn't work with him usually. It was guys getting a spotlight, which they wouldn't get usually. And it was just exciting. It was exciting, and it's been the same for AEW over in TNT. We had Eddie Kingston last week. He was trending worldwide. Sign Eddie Kingston. Why? Because he was in an open challenge. If you'd announced prior to time, we're going to have Eddie Kingston on Dynamite, we'd have had people would be happy, people would be interested, but it would have probably got a lukewarm reaction. Him coming out unannounced, making a big impact, pun intended. I always get my impact puns in on these videos. But he made the impact, got people to talk about him, and next thing you know, Sign Eddie Kingston is trending all over Twitter. So the open challenge format absolutely works. What I don't like about this version of the open challenge is that I'm not really sure that a world championship should be available in an open challenge every week. I think a world championship should mean something. I think world championship matches should mean something. If you're seeing a world championship match on free-to-air TV, it should be very rare and it should feel like a big deal. I worry that it happening every single week on Impact Wrestling and Access TV will wear a bit thin recently. And I know that maybe might sound a bit hypocritical from me because I've been the one recently saying Impact has so much momentum. They need to do anything to keep up this momentum. They need to keep people watching. They need to do whatever they can to ensure that people watching and keep up this positive momentum. And maybe that's a way to do it. I've just said that an open challenge is a great way to keep people watching and hook people in and try and get people guessing about who opponent's going to be and create moments, right? That's what professional wrestling is. It's about creating moments and telling stories. But I don't know. For me, it just feels a bit wrong to have the World Championship be doing that. That's just me, though. I mean, I might be wrong on that point. But during this Open Challenge announcement by Eddie Edwards, he was interrupted by Eric Young himself. Eric Young interrupts. He comes out to the ring and says that even though he lost at the weekend, he wants another shot at the Impact World Championship. He deserves it. Everything that he's done in Impact Wrestling, the caliber of an athlete he is, he deserves an Impact World Championship shot. Now, Eddie Edwards says that the Open Challenge is open to everyone. It's an open challenge. It's open to anyone on the Impact Wrestling roster and beyond, but it's not open to Eric Young. And the reason as to why is because he's not getting a shot because of what Eric Young did to Rich Swann at Slammiversary. His actions were reprehensible, wrong. He tried to end Rich Swann's career after he'd fought so hard to get it back. He returns to the ring and then you try and cripple him again. How dare you? How dare you? You're not worthy of the Impact World Championship, and you're certainly not worthy of an Impact Wrestling World Championship opportunity. So while it is open to everyone else, it's not open to you. And Eric Young kind of gives the whole, I'll get the shot eventually. So we're going to have Eddie Edwards doing the Open Challenge for several weeks. We know that this coming week on Impact Wrestling on Access Television, he's going to be facing Trey Miguel, who of course was also in the Impact World Championship match at Slammiversary. So it's good to see him get another opportunity, although I would prefer him to be more in the X Division as opposed to lots of shots at the Impact World Championship. But I think, and look, eventually Eric Young, it's inevitable that Eric Young is going to get his opportunity, right? It is a matter of time. Eric Young, at the moment, after the way that he's returned to the company, the character that he's doing, the psychotic, crazed madman, the lunatic, which is a bit of an extension on Sanity. If you're not super familiar with his work in NXT as Sanity, if you didn't watch NXT back then, that's the whole group. I mean, it was called Sanity. It was a bunch of crazed people. That's what the original crazy Nikki Cross was Insanity. And Eric Young was this crazed lunatic. Killian Dane and Alexander Wolf were all in that group, and they were all insane and crazed people. That's the point. It was crazy people coming together that nobody could control. And this version of Eric Young in Impact Wrestling, I think, is just an extension of what he was doing in WWE. Probably turned up an extra notch or two, because I don't remember him being even this crazy in NXT. But fair play to him, because I think the character's great. So with how hot that Eric Young is at the moment, the momentum that Eric Young has at the moment, how great his character is on Impact Wrestling at the moment, and just the fact that he was the first person to interrupt Eddie Edwards last week, it's inevitable that EY eventually gets his opportunity, right? So I think at some point, not immediately, maybe 4 or 5 weeks' time. Maybe it could really be that long. 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks' time. Eric Young does what he needs to do, and eventually he gets his opportunity at the Impact World Championship and gets to answer the Impact World Championship Open Challenge against Eddie Edwards on Impact Wrestling on Access Television. So what happens in that match? Well, I think this is crucial as to what is going to happen in this Rich Swann versus Eric Young feud in the future. What I think happens is when EY eventually gets his opportunity, it looks like that Eric Young could potentially have the match won. We have some form of a ref bump or something like that. The referee's distracted, whatever. And Eric Young maybe used some dastardly tactics. It looks like, for all intents and purposes, that Eric Young is going to win the match. EY, after being initially denied a World Championship opportunity by Eddie Edwards, is going to steal the championship. The dastardly heel is going to win. But then what happens? Out comes Rich Swann. Rich Swann comes back, maybe after being off of TV for 6 weeks or whatever. Maybe he's in a cast, or maybe he's still on crutches, whatever. But out comes Rich Swann. He attacks Eric Young, maybe hits him with a crutch, or maybe he's fully healed by then. Attacks Eric Young, costs him the match, and Eddie Edwards retains. So that kicks off the Rich Swann and Eric Young feud, because I think that's eventually where it's going, right? You can't have Eric Young destroy Rich Swann at Slammiversary, and then there's no retribution for Rich Swann. I think there's big plans for both men in the future going forward for Impact Wrestling. I think this is a match that we're going to get somewhere down the line, and I think this would be the perfect way to kickstart it. You have Eric Young demanding that he's given a World Championship opportunity for weeks and weeks on end. Maybe it even forces him to try and put out other people and force Eddie Edwards' hands. Unless you give me a World Championship opportunity, I'm going to continue to hurt people and put them out unless you give me what I want. Eddie Edwards caves in, gives him what he wants, and then finally we have Rich Swann make his return to Impact Wrestling Television and attack Eric Young, cost him the match. This kicks off the road to the eventual Eric Young versus Rich Swann match. You then have maybe Eric Young and Rich Swann attacking each other for several weeks. I think more the latter. I think then you have Rich Swann continuously showing up and attacking Eric Young, but Eric Young is a crazed lunatic too, so don't write him off being the one to attack numerous people. And where does this all lead eventually down the line? I think it eventually leads to a Bound for Glory showdown, right? Bound for Glory, traditionally, even up there with Slammiversary, has been Impact Wrestling's biggest show of the year. It was always presented as Impact Wrestling's equivalent of WrestleMania. All roads always led to Bound for Glory, right? We've had some huge moments in Impact Wrestling history at Bound for Glory. So I think the Rich Swann Eric Young match takes place there. And think about it, it works on a timeline as well. So you had Slammiversary in July. You have Rich Swann out till probably maybe the end of August, where you can have that big summer match between Eric Young and Eddie Edwards. And then you have Rich Swann return. And then you've got September and a little bit of October to do the Rich Swann versus Eddie Edwards versus Rich Swann versus Eric Young feud as we head into Bound for Glory, which is, of course, is an October pay-per-view too. So the timeline for me works out on that one, which is why I think it's likely. But you have to consider, like, with all of the craziness that's gone on already in this Rich Swann versus Eric Young feud, and it's barely begun. I mean, we've only had the attack on Rich Swann by Eric Young. But after all the craziness that has happened in this feud so far, where do we go with it? It can't just be a singles match. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in professional wrestling, is that when you have these matches that are such a personal issue, whether it's you mess with this guy's family, or you attack this guy, tried to end his career, you used to be their best friends, and you broke up, you've fell in love with another woman, or your tag team broke up, you betrayed your best friend, stabbed him in the back, whatever, and then the first match they have, or the blow-off match, it's like, we're going to have a singles match. Like, seriously? That's how you're going to settle this personal issue? That's how you're going to settle it and try and beat the hell out of each other, is by wrestling holds and not closed fists because they're illegal? I mean, what the hell? So I think this has to, right? It has to have some form of special stipulation, whether that is a steel cage match. Personally, I think it'll end up being something like a Monsters Ball match. Not that Eric Young and Rich Swann are totally familiar with Monsters Ball matches. Although Eric Young has competed in a couple, of course, he was the one responsible for eventually unmasking Abyss, or being the one to actually reveal that Joseph Park, rather, was Abyss. During, I believe it was 2014, Eric Young was in a bit of I wouldn't necessarily say a rivalry, but a confrontation with Joseph Parks and Abyss, and he convinced him or encouraged him to reveal that indeed Abyss and Joseph Parks were indeed the same people. They weren't brothers, they were just more alter egos of themselves. And they had a Monsters Ball matches during all of that. So potentially we could have a Monsters Ball match. I think with this psychotic, evil, crazed heel character, that fits Eric Young's character perfectly. And if then you have to think about in kayfabe, you have to think about Rich Swann's intentions. He wants to get retribution. He wants to destroy Eric Young. I mean, Eric Young was the one that tried to end his career just after he'd fought to get it back. So what would you want to do to a guy that has done that? You would want to try and end his career, and the Monsters Ball is a perfect opportunity to do that. So I think it's likely we have Eric Young versus Rich Swann in a Monsters Ball match at Bound for Glory, at the biggest event of Impact Wrestling's year. And I think it makes the most sense from a timeline point of view. I think it makes the most sense from a storyline point of view. And it's something I'm interested in watching. Like I said before, this isn't a feud. This isn't a match that would have completely jumped off the card to me and I'd have been like, oh, I really want to see it. If you'd have told me 6 months ago, okay, Bound for Glory 2020 Impact Wrestling, Monsters Ball, Rich Swann versus Eric Young, I'd have been like, and? Because, again, no slight against either men, but there's no reason prior to this to care. You know, that they're great wrestlers and they can work, and I'm sure the match itself will be great and fun, and they do some crazy spots and all of that sort of stuff. But as a viewer, and this is what's really, really important for professional wrestlers, and you hear lots of Hall of Famers and whatever say it, once an audience is emotionally invested into the character or invested in just the angle that they're watching or whatever, it makes something go from a 7 to a 10 because you have them. You have the audience then, they make it. They make it. And people will say, well, how do you do that without any audience? And the answer to that is it is tough. Okay, it is tough that if you had people in the crowd that were emotionally invested in the angle, then the match would be phenomenal. But I'm just talking at this point as a viewer at home. If you're watching at home on your television screens or your tablets or wherever you consume your content, if you're emotionally invested and you care about the characters and you care about the match that you're watching, then it's another level. You can go in a deep dive in it. You can just lose yourself. You can immerse yourself in whatever you're watching, and it's just entertaining to watch because you've got that investment in it. You've got that connection with the character. You've got them in connection with the angle, with the match. And that's what this has done for me. I'm emotionally invested in both characters now. I wasn't prior to this. I'm emotionally invested in the feud because I'm interested to see where it goes. I want to see Rich Swann come back, and I want to see Rich Swann kick the evil heel's butt. That's what I want to see, and I'm fascinated with this Eric Young character. I'm invested in Eric Young, the person, as well, because I think after just the complete mismanagement that he had in WWE, I want to see him succeed, and I want to see him do well, and I want to see him prove his worth. And look, he also was on the Busted Open radio show this past week, and he talked about WWE's broken system and their flawed creative process, and Vince McMahon, and you have a 3-hour show and you can't find 5 minutes for Eric Young, and I can do it all. I've done comedy, I've done seriousness, I've done tag teams, I've done you name it, I've done it, and you can't find Eric Young 5 minutes on Monday Night Raw. There's something wrong with your show. Your show's broken, your system is broken, your company is broken. And I believe in Eric Young, and I want to see him succeed. And I was glad when I saw him return to Impact Wrestling because that's where he's done his best work, that's where he's best known, and all of that sort of stuff he's done well at Impact Wrestling. So again, I'm emotionally invested from that point. I want to see him do well, and I want to see him succeed. Same with Rich Swann. I wasn't massively invested in his character before Slammiversary, but now that they've got a bit of a hot angle going and an angle that I enjoyed, I want to see him succeed. I want to see him pay it off. I don't want to be disappointed. I want to see him do well. So I'm all in. I'm all in with this angle. I think it was done. I think it was the initial shoot of it. The shot was fantastic, done really well. I hope this is the direction that they go in when it comes to EY's involvement with Eddie Edwards in the Impact World Championship Open Challenge. I hope this is the direction that they go in when it comes to Rich Swann returning and costing Eric Young the Impact World Championship, because let's be honest, if someone had tried to re-break your leg after having 2 surgeries, I'd at the very least want to cost them the Impact World Championship, and then after that I'd want to make their lives a living hell, which is what I think Rich Swann will do going forward. So that makes all the sense in the world. So I'm fascinated to see how they do it. I'm fascinated to see the build-up to their eventual match, and I'm fascinated to see the development of Eric Young now that he's back in Impact Wrestling. So it's a really exciting time and a really exciting angle. So it's something I'm really looking forward to. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on a potential Eric Young versus Rich Swann feud and match at Bound for Glory? Do you think a match could be a monster's ball? Would you like to see something different? Let me know your stipulations in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on how this angle will play out, and let me know your thoughts on Eric Young since he's returned to Impact Wrestling. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to reply and respond to all of your comments. I really do enjoy interacting with all of you guys down there. Thank you to everyone that does leave a comment on the channel as well. It's much appreciated. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out on the channel, getting into people's recommendation feeds and moving up the rankings on YouTube. So if you have enjoyed it, please do like us. I would really appreciate that. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We're on our road to 600 subscribers. I know I always say this at the end of every video, but we're on our road to 600 subscribers on the long road to 1,000. Once we get to 1,000, I'll stop nagging, but I'll also we'll start doing more live streams, more watch-alongs, just lots more fun live streaming content here on YouTube. It's just a lot easier once we get to 1,000 subscribers to do that. So the quicker we get to 1,000 subscribers, we can get some really fun and engaging content with you, and it would be really much appreciated. If you have already subscribed to the channel, I really appreciate you watching, and I really appreciate your subscription. It really does mean a lot to me. It's incredibly humbling that anyone wants to listen to me talk about pro wrestling. My aim for this channel is just to be an open discussion with pro wrestling with fans that feels like you're talking about pro wrestling with a friend. That's the aim for this channel. So I really do appreciate everyone that has subscribed already. And if you haven't, please do subscribe. You can also follow us on all of our social media platforms. The handles are on the screen right now. The links are in the description box below. It's at 365 Wrestle on Twitter, at WrestleNews 365 on Facebook and Instagram. So if you haven't already, please do give us a follow or a like there. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'm sure I'll speak with you again very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.